The snow fell relentlessly that Christmas Eve, soft as down but endless, layering the cobbled streets of Eldamire in a thick, suffocating whiteness. Gas lamps flickered along the alleyways, their glow struggling against the dark. The clock tower at St. Harlow's Chapel, pride of the village, loomed above it all, its great bronze bell waiting for midnight to ring in the sacred hour. But tonight, something was wrong. Through the falling snow, a figure moved like a whisper, hooded, deliberate. Boots crunched soundlessly on the snow. The figure paused just outside the chapel, where a wreath of holly sagged over the oaken door, the crimson berries glistening like drops of blood. A gloved hand reached out, and with a swift motion, the door creaked open. Inside, the air was cold and still. Shadows of wooden pews sprawled across the stone floor. The figure glided toward the narrow spiral staircase, the path upward leading into deeper darkness. Above, the bell room was quiet save for the ticking of a brass clock mounted on the wall. The bell itself, old, massive, and dark with age, loomed silently. It had rung every Christmas for 2 centuries. It had survived wars, storms, and the cruel march of time. The village relied on its solemn chime to mark the holiest of nights, the one constant in a world of change. The figure reached up and, with surprising strength, placed a hook beneath the great bell. Chains, hidden in the folds of a black cloak, were quickly drawn around it. A small vial of oil was produced, and in moments the ancient mechanism of the bell's mount had been silenced. As if the bell were no more than a sack of grain, it began to lower, inch by inch. The bell was being stolen. It should have been impossible, absurd even. But the figure's movements were practiced, precise. This was no crime of passion, no whim of a desperate thief. This was a plan executed with cold calculation. For what reason? To steal a piece of history? To ransom it back to the village? Or was the purpose darker still? Down below, the villagers gathered in their homes, candles flickering behind frosted windows. The scent of roasted chestnuts and mulled wine curled through the streets. Children pressed their faces against the glass, hoping to glimpse Santa's sleigh in the stormy sky. No one knew that Eldamire's Christmas was about to be robbed of its heartbeat. But fate, ever fickle, was not ready to play accomplice. As the figure in the bell tower strained to control the descent, the ancient metal gave a sudden, rebellious groan. The sound split the silence, not a peal of triumph, but a low, ominous warning. Far below, Inspector Harold Blythe, who had been patrolling the snowy streets, heard it. His instincts, honed over years of chasing burglars and pickpockets, prickled like needles. He looked up at the tower, his breath a ghostly mist. The bell, he muttered, and began to run. The thief, sensing time slip through their fingers like melting snow, yanked hard on the chains. The bell jerked downward with a screech. Momentum was no longer their ally, it was their master. The great weight tipped precariously. And then it fell. A shattering crash echoed through the chapel. The bell collided with the stone floor below, splintering the wooden beams meant to support it. A cloud of dust and debris roared upward. The thief was gone before the echoes faded. A smear of black against the snow, disappearing into the darkened streets. Inspector Blythe burst into the chapel, coughing on the dust. His eyes widened at the devastation, the bell, cracked and still, the sacred sound it held silenced forever. He clenched his jaw. The thief was out there in the night, carrying away nothing but failure. The villagers arrived soon after, drawn by the noise, their faces pale with shock. Christmas was upon them, but the bell's voice, that steady assurance of hope and tradition, was no more. Yet, in the solemn silence that followed, a young girl's clear voice rose in song. A carol, old and sweet, woven from memory and innocence. One by one, others joined in, their voices growing stronger, filling the void left by the broken bell. Inspector Blythe looked up at the tower, the thief's escape route lost to the swirling snow. He didn't pursue. The village didn't need justice tonight. It needed hope. And as their song filled the chapel and spilled into the night, hope returned to Eldamire, not in the ringing of a bell, but in the resilience of its people. The thief, whoever they were, had stolen the bell. But they could not steal Christmas.